Welcome, listeners. We're back here on the Pottscast. I'm Darren Potts. I'm your host. It is MMA Mayhem here on the Pottscast, and I'm with undefeated fighter Christian Natividad. Christian has fought his last 3 fights LFA, 3 wins, 1 by decision, 2 by knockouts. The first 2 fights didn't last very long. The third fight, it went the distance, but the guy, I'm not going to say lucky, but he's certainly saved by the bell at the end of the first round. I'm sure we'll get into that as the podcast gets going. But without further ado, Christian, welcome to the show and thank you for accepting my invitation.
Of course, man. What's up, everybody? Thank you for having me. Super excited to be on this podcast.
Well, delighted to have you here. It's my pleasure. Delighted that you responded when I reached out. Really excited to get talking to you. But before we kind of get really into it, tell me a couple of just quick facts about you, maybe 2 or 3 facts that maybe everyone doesn't know about you.
So one of them is, I'm an MMA fighter originally from Eva Beach, Hawaii. I feel like everybody knows that. I was originally born in New Jersey. That's a fun fact that no one knows. And fact that I'm pretty sure most people know just because of one of my interviews back for the LFA. I am the national finance manager for one of the biggest solar companies in the world, Titan Solar Power.
That's really interesting. Really interesting. Did not realize that. It is possible to do a desk job, to be involved in finance and also beat people up for a living. It's effectively what we've just found out.
Yeah. And it's definitely hard to juggle the 2 different careers, but I mean, you got 24 hours in a day, so that's more than enough time to do both.
Yeah, absolutely. What about whenever you're preparing for a fight or whenever you're sort of hitting camp and getting ready for a fight, managing that, juggling that, what time does your day start usually?
So my days are always going to start at the same time. They start every day at 7 o'clock in the morning. And Titan, I got to give them so much credit for letting me be able to chase this dream. But as a manager, I'm able to kind of make my own schedule anytime I have to go to train. So if I come in at 7 o'clock in the morning, I have to leave at 12 and I come back at 3. I just stay another few hours, maybe stay until like 7 o'clock just to get in a little bit more work done at my desk job. Or it could be the other way around. I just work 8 hours straight, get off at 3 o'clock and head to the gym and stay there for a few hours. They're super, super flexible as far as the times I could train. So really grateful for them.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like you've got everything somewhat under control, a crazy busy schedule. You have a lot of stuff going on, but we're going to talk about specifically more your fighting career as it evolved to your financial desk career. And the first thing I want to talk about, why MMA? What attracted you to martial arts? Was it something as a kid? Tell me a bit about your journey into MMA, first of all.
Yeah, so I've always been a violent kid. I've always liked punching things. I used to like punch my dad's arm a lot. I just had something in me that I always wanted to just close my fist, bite down on my teeth, and just punch something really hard. I don't know what it was. MMA, it was actually never really something I had in mind as far as a career pathway. Originally, right out of high school, I wanted to be an officer in the military. I was actually in the junior ROTC program for all 4 years of high school, and I was actually a very high-ranking cadet in high school. I had 2 full-ride scholarship opportunities, and actually screwed those over. I actually messed them up, and I messed up on a huge opportunity, but I wouldn't change anything for it. I love where I'm at right now with chasing MMA. So it started off, I went to college for 2 years, and I was in the ROTC program, and long story short, military wasn't the thing that I wanted to do anymore. So I had my brother move out to Arizona with me, and he was actually training at Arizona Combat Sports. And I just thought to myself, I might as well just start training with him because I have so much fun doing jiu-jitsu. I wrestled in high school, and just over the few months training with him, I just got so addicted to it. And a year later, I decided to take my first MMA fight.
Incredible journey. And I think it's not, we should mention your brother as well. Your brother's fighting this coming weekend on the UFC card, the Usman and Masvidal card. Could not near said Usman and Burns. The Usman and Masvidal card. Your brother's a fighter as well. Was there a bit of because it's your bigger brother, your older brother, was there a bit like, oh, this is interesting what he's doing, I want to try it? Or was it just that desire that you enjoyed punching things and beating things up, I suppose, that attracted you to it? Or was there a little bit of, oh, my brother's doing it, I'll give it a go?
I definitely got to give my brother credit because I'm pretty sure if he wasn't here, I would have never been fighting MMA. So, kind of like I said, I've always been that aggressive kid. But back when I was a sophomore in high school, my brother at the time, he was already training MMA. He was mainly doing jiu-jitsu. One day he just invited me over and he said, "Hey, you should come training one time." And without hesitation, I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna stop by and go train with you. So he brought me and I met all our training partners and I honestly fell in love with it that day. As far as when I decided to not pursue RTC, he was definitely that extra push as far as, hey, let's get you into the cage and let's get you an MMA fight. I would have never been training at Arizona Combat Sports if it wasn't for him, because the way he got brought to that gym is his coaches back in Hawaii was actually the coach of our current coaches, Trevor and Todd Lally at Arizona Combat Sports.
It's really, really interesting. And all of that is interesting because you and your brother, it's almost like the similar sort of journey, but obviously differences. From your perspective, growing up, and your brother is a couple of years older than you, what was your family's reaction like when you also decided to pursue the MMA route and the fighting route? Were they supportive of that, or were they wanting you to maybe go in a different direction?
They hated it, especially
Really?
my mom. No, no support at all from my mom when I first decided to fight MMA. Wrestling, she was fine with it because there weren't any strikes involved with it, and I actually became a state champion my second year of wrestling. So she just loved to see me win, and she was confident with my abilities, and also without the fear of getting punched in the face. I also had good grades in high school, so she wanted me to become like a nurse or something like that. And I mean, I had good grades, but I don't think I'm nearly as smart to be a nurse or anything like that. After my first MMA fight, though, my mom was there. My dad wasn't. She saw me perform, and that's the first time she's ever seen me throw any strikes or do some ground and pound. And after she saw my first performance, she grew so much confidence, and now she is 100% for it, and she is always going to be right behind me, and she's always going to be my number one supporter.
I think that's amazing, the turnaround from that, like wanting you to go a different direction, to not missing a fight, to being the number one supporter in your corner, to seeing you throw bombs and to strike other people. And let's touch a little bit on that, because when you hit people, they crumble. And that's one of the things that I've noticed from watching your fights. And I know you kind of laugh because I know there's always that little bit of like embarrassment. You don't want to maybe like put yourself over, so to speak, but it's very evident in your career. You know, there was one of those fights in particular, I think it was Aquila, and you knocked him down. You're just like, get up. And you just kept knocking him down before just effectively finishing that fight, which incredible finish. Is that something you've worked on, or is that something that's, you mentioned it as a kid being aggressive and like punching things? Is that always came natural to you, or is that sort of progressively got better as you've got older?
Yeah, it's always came natural to me. But what's crazy is I've had 5 amateur fights, and I've had 3 TKOs as an amateur, but all of those TKOs came from me taking the guy down and doing some ground and pound. It was not until my first professional fight when I finally grew confidence in my stand-up, and that's when I finally started believing, hey, I could actually knock these people down and I could actually drop them. I don't want to say I fear getting hit, but I didn't want to get hit as an amateur, and now that I turned pro, I kind of just unlocked a new switch where I don't care if I get hit. Not saying I do want to get hit, but it's MMA, man. You're going to get hit regardless. So you can't really run away from that. So if I'm going to get hit, I might as well just hit them back harder.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we've seen that your first 2 fights with LFA, particularly, you know, we've seen how hard you hit and how good and how clean your strikes were. Your third fight is the one that I wanted to spend a little bit more time on. And I mentioned about it earlier. It looked like you pretty much had that fight won towards the end of the first round. And I wouldn't say that the buzzer saved someone. It did it in a sense, but we know that the rounds are that minute long and it is what it is. But if that fight round was 30 seconds longer, that fight probably ends. Is that a bit, not maybe a frustration, maybe frustration is the right word. Is that a bit of a frustration? Like, oh, just if I had 10 more seconds, or what was sort of your thinking at that stage? Or was it very much like in your corner, getting into your water, and I know I'm better than him. It's just about finishing it now.
That fight was actually a very, very interesting fight for me. And I'm very glad the way that it played out because I've learned so much. So coming into the fight, when I woke up in the morning, I felt good all day long. I felt great. I decided to meditate all day because I didn't have anything else to do. And when I usually meditate pretty often, but when I meditate, it's only for about 30 minutes. This past fight, I meditated for a few hours. And I think by the time that I got to the venue, my brain was just exhausted and I wasn't completely there. So at the end of the first round, to be honest, I was cheesecake brain, man. I had no idea what was going on. I just like sat down in my corner and I was like, I'm in a fight, man. I gotta go. And also just the week coming on to it, I know I had a lot of viewers watching me and they were expecting another walk-off KO. So I really, really tried to deliver that. And the thing is, when you try to knock out someone like and try to force something that isn't there, it's really hard for it to come by. So me having that pressure of trying to meet everyone's standards of having another walk-off KO, I'm pretty sure that had another effect on it because I was winding up my punches and I was throwing these right hooks and overhands as hard as I could. But since they're a little telegraphed, he saw it coming and he was probably just able to roll with the punches. So it is what it is. It was not the performance that I wanted, but what I learned from it, definitely worth the experience.
And in fairness to him, I mean, he took a pounding and he took it pretty well, in fairness to him, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
at the same time as well, probably for you as a fighter, you probably learned some stuff about yourself that maybe you didn't know in terms of going through all the rounds and you were able to win a different way than maybe people just saying, here's another knockout artist. Whereas you were able to go through like a knockout, you dragged it out. It was all the rounds, you got everything in, and then you had your arm raised at the end. So there's something about the fortitude in that of being able to battle through all those rounds as well. And I think that's incredibly important for you as a fighter. You said it wasn't the performance that you wanted, but looking back at it now, the lessons you've learned from it, would you change it going back?
I wouldn't change a thing, man. It's I'm still not happy with the way I performed, but I know what to expect for my next fight. And kind of like you said, I know how it feels to go 15 minutes in a competition setting. Because in practice, we go 4 or 5 minute rounds, sometimes even 5 minute rounds, and I'm usually dead. But being on the canvas at a gym versus the canvas in front of a crowd, two completely different vibes and two completely different feelings that you have. So just being able to know that I could manage that adrenaline rush wouldn't change a thing.
Tell me about that adrenaline rush, because you mentioned at a gym and then you've mentioned when you go in, live fight, the cage, the door closes and it's time to go. What's going through your brain when it's time to go? Is there are you processing a lot of stuff, or is it very much tunnel vision? It's kill or be killed.
It's tunnel vision, man. So that's the thing about visualizing. It's so important. And I'm giving away my secrets here, but um, visualizing is so important because you don't want it to be the first time you're in a setting or doing something. Every time when I have an MMA fight or when I compete in the LFA, I've been there a million times, man. I've visualized myself walking out, throwing these strikes, getting my hand raised, whatever it is. I visualized it all. So I see everything before. Whereas if it's the first time me walking into something, I feel like there's just so many unexpected things that could happen. Like I don't know where my corner is. I'm not used to the crowd. So just being able to visualize the entire experience beforehand, it just makes everything seem how should I say it, seem familiar.
Is there nerves? Do you find you have any nerves before a fight?
There definitely is nerves, but the nerves are more so to the weeks following up to the fight and even the week of the fight. When I get to the venue, though, for some reason, all my nerves just shut off, which is a good thing. I feel like that's how I get really comfortable, and I'm able to kind of let loose and perform the way that I practice. Definitely, there are nerves, but not so much during and before the fight, right before the fight.
What about when your brother's fighting? I know that your brother's fighting this weekend. You're with your brother, I believe, right now. You're getting ready for the fights this weekend. Is there much different between maybe when you're with your brother preparing for his fight and when you're preparing for your own fight in terms of how you guys interact with each other, the differences in the mentality, things like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so me and my brother are actually roommates, so I see him pretty much every day. Talking about nerves, there's nerves leading up to the day of the fight, and there's nerves during the fight. So I get so nervous watching my brother and even my teammates watching them fight, just because there's nothing I can do but hope that he does this and does that. I have no control over anything. So definitely, there's a lot more nerves when my brother fights. As far as interactions and stuff, my brother, he's very strong-minded. So actually, I was talking to him like 20 minutes before this podcast, and it seems like he's not even fighting. He's just so calm and collective. Only difference is that he's not eating good, and I am.
Yeah. You like your food then?
Oh, I love to eat, man. They don't call me the poi pounder for nothing. I love to eat, man. I love to eat food. I just eating is my thing, and I actually eat. One of our teammates, his name is Tyrell Fortune. He's a heavyweight for Bellator. He says I eat more than him, and I wouldn't doubt it. I eat a lot, man.
You just got those good genes, though. You got those good genes.
Yeah, I got those good genes, and I work hard, man. Once I turn 40, though, it's gonna all catch up to me. I'll wake up one day just a big blob, like a lot of my uncles. A lot of my uncles that are watching.
That's shots fired right there.
Yeah.
Well, as your brother's fighting this weekend, UFC. People always talk about their goals to get to the UFC. Let's talk a little bit about your goals. Your brother's there. Your brother's in the UFC and he's fighting. Is that the goal for you? What is your future goals? What are your aspirations going forward?
So the thing that I hate about this is everyone always says it, but I'm going to have to say it because I do share the same goal as a lot of people, but I really do want to become a UFC champion. And with that being said, getting to the UFC, it definitely is a short-term goal, but that's not my end goal. And since that's not my end goal, I'm not going to be in a rush to achieving that goal. I'm going to take my time getting to the UFC because I know once I get to the UFC, that's go time, and that's where I have to really take over. I was talking to this guy. His name is AJ. He actually works for First Round, and he said, "Hey, man, let me get you into the Contender Series, whatever. We could get you into the UFC super quick." And I told him, "Hey, man, I'm just going to enjoy the ride. I'm going to take my time, build my experience, get these fights in, get a really good resume. And when I'm ready, then I'll let you know, hey, get me to the UFC. Because I know when I get to the UFC, I'm going to run over all these guys and I'll be able to get that championship. I don't want to say really quick, but I'll be there at some point."
That's the thing, isn't it? I think there's a learning curve, and I think, in my opinion anyway, and I'm just an armchair fan, so it's maybe not that much of a thing, but in my opinion, it's certainly worth the learning experience, and that's why I think your last fight was really good for you, because you didn't get that KO early. You got to do those 3 5-minute rounds. You got the full 15 minutes in. You got that experience. It was a knockdown, drag it out fight. Don't think the result was ever in doubt, but you got those. You got all the rounds in. You got it under the lights. It was a different experience for you than just a quick KO. And from LFA as well, there's a lot of good fighters in LFA. There's a lot of talent there. There's a lot of people trying to prove a point and trying to make a name for themselves. And a guy who's in the UFC that I previously spoke to, and I think this stands in very good stead for you, is one of the points that he was making. He said, if you're not finishing people, you're not going to be even looked at by the UFC. And certainly in your career, you're finishing more, pretty much around 80% of your fights, you're finishing them, which is great. But for you, it's certainly about the journey, and I'm excited to kind of see where that journey goes. But you mentioned something earlier about your brother, and you talked about his mindset and how strong he was. What does it take to be a fighter in terms of your mental toughness? Because you've talked about meditation, which is key for your brain. You've talked about your brother and how calm he is. But talk to me about the mentality and the mental toughness needed to succeed in probably a very unforgiving world, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so to be an MMA fighter, which sounds a little crazy, but it's 100% true, you need to have a little bit of crazy in you. You have to be able to kind of just think about really, really causing some major trauma to someone, which sounds horrible, but that's what it is. When you're standing on the opposite side of in the cage against someone else, they're thinking the same thing. They want to take your head off, and they don't care if you're not going to be able to walk for the next 5 years or whatever it is. They're still going to take your leg out or try to take your lights out. So just being able to have a little bit of crazy, and where there's a lot of discipline, is being able to show up to the gym and being able to do the workouts and give your all to it. You can't just be crazy. You need to be able to give in the hours and put in the time to get that end result that you want.
That's the thing as well. It's hours and hours of practice and constant repetition. You talked about it earlier, wrestling in high school, and then you started jiu-jitsu whenever you moved to Arizona and got involved with the gym.
Mm-hmm.
What's your preference? Do you obviously have enjoyed wrestling, you've been a state champion, you're really enjoying jiu-jitsu. You've realized that when you punch people, you can break people. So you're beginning to put all the pieces together. Is there a particular aspect of the fight game, I suppose, that you enjoy the most?
I really like the stand-up game. Originally, I'm a ground fighter. I started off with jiu-jitsu. I'm actually a purple belt now. Competed at Worlds, competed at Fight to Win Pro. I've done a good amount of events at for jiu-jitsu. And then wrestling, I wrestled in college for a year and a half. Technically, I wrestled 1 year at Southern Oregon University, which is a NAIA division school, and when I transferred over to ASU, I wrestled for them for a little bit. Technically, I can't even say I really wrestled for them because I was there for only half of the season. But I walked onto the team, and I was able to hang with those guys for a little bit. But just being able to kind of feel the punches going through someone and just being able to see people getting dropped from my punches, it's definitely a different feeling than it is to tap someone out or to put someone on their back and pin them. Huge different kind of rush.
Absolutely. I can only imagine it. I've done a bit of kickboxing, done a bit of Muay Thai, really enjoyed it. Love the workout, love the experience of it. I've never been one to be thrown about or grounded and pounded upon or whatever, even in a jiu-jitsu background, but it's certainly on my list to learn. Tell me about a bit about yourself and your brother. We talked about it earlier. Have you ever fought on the same card? And if so, have you liked or disliked being in the same card?
Yeah, so we actually fought MMA twice on the same card, and we actually competed at Fight to Win Pro on the same card as well. There's actually a really good trend. Every time we compete with each other, we dominate. So maybe we should be fighting on the same card every fight, just so we know we could win that fight. But one of my first MMA fight, not my first MMA fight, but the first event that I competed on the same card as my brother. It was actually for Ironborg Promotions. Super good promotion here in Arizona. I think they did close down though due to COVID. I won by TKO and he won by TKO, and LFA 85, he won by knockout and I won by knockout as well. So definitely a really good trend as far as competing on the same card.
It's really interesting. I was watching the Bellator on Friday, and Lance Gibson Jr. Was fighting, and Julia Budd, his mother-in-law, was in his corner, and he was back out in her corner later. And I just thought that was really cool. With your brother being in the sport, I was curious of had you ever fought in the same card? Because I'm sure it's fun as well in the build up to the camp, because you're in everything together, you're doing everything together, and maybe even the weight cut. Talk to me a little bit about the weight cut. You said you like your food. Do you find the weight cut hard, or do you maintain your kind of weight throughout the year? Are you relatively close to your fighting weight?
So this is where I gotta thank Titan, because sometimes I'm so busy managing the entire pipeline for all the deals that we have to finance. So since I'm so busy at work, sometimes I actually even forget to eat. Whereas if I was just sitting at home watching Netflix all day, I'm gonna be eating every 30 minutes. So definitely got to give a lot of thanks to them, because they keep me distracted and keep me busy from all the food. As far as cutting down, my past few fights have been at 35, and those weight cuts are super easy for me. I walk around probably like 150. like high 40s, low 50s. So making down that cut to 125, I think it'll be a little bit more challenging. But I fought at 25 before, and I think that if I want to make it big in this sport, I think that's my best route to go. Just because I think I could run through a lot of the guys in the UFC at 125. 35, it's a little bit tougher weight class, but those are two weight classes that I want to pretty much be the king of.
Two very fun weight classes as well, you know, particularly we seen Demetrius Johnson lose a couple of weeks back.
Oh yeah.
Still a bit of a shock. You know, we've had, you know, the illegal knees debate, and then he says it's okay, and then ironically he loses by pretty much one. You know, that 125 division is just fun, and the 135 division is very fun, but there's also like a huge list of killers in there. And one of my questions I love asking people is, and this could be past, present, future, whatever you want. If you could fantasy book your own fight, who would you like to fight and why?
Francis Ngannou, because he's the baddest man on the planet.
That's a big size difference.
Yeah, never gonna happen. Let me see. So, past or present, who would I fight? You know, what is crazy is I've always been a huge fan of Henry Cejudo. I was actually, he was the guy that I used to watch back in high school. I used to try to copy his low singles. And when he made over that transition to MMA, I was a huge fan of him. And when I figured out that he actually lived in Arizona, I was actually really mind blown because he wasn't too far from the gym I was training at. And now that me and my brother, we were cross training at Arizona Combat Sports and Fight Ready is the gym that he trains out of, it's pretty surreal because he's actually in that room hustling and training whenever he's there. So just being able to be in the presence of him working out. But if I were to say who I would want to fight, it'd probably be him, just because he is a stud. He's defeated Demetrius Johnson, knocked out TJ Dillashaw, and knocked out Dominic Cruz as well. Olympic champion, the champ of the 25 and 35 is a goal, same goal that I have, that I want to do here in the next few years. If I were able to beat him, I know I could beat anybody.
I think he probably doesn't get the respect he probably deserves. You know, when you look at different, especially in the UFC, and you talk about like John Jones, people talk about GSP and Habib and stuff like that. He isn't really mentioned, but he probably should be. You know, given his record and given the who's who of people that he's beaten, 2-division champion in the Olympics and everything that goes with it, I think he's probably not rated probably as well as he should be.
Yeah, I feel like he doesn't have a big name. I believe Cody Garbrandt has a bigger name than he does, and he just I mean, he did make Dominic Cruz look bad in their fight against each other, but Henry Cejudo knocked him out. He knocked out TJ Dillashaw. TJ Dillashaw knocked out Cody Garbrandt twice, and just being an Olympic champion itself, I feel like he deserves way more credit than he does have. But fans decide to pick who they want to fan over, so really can't really do much there.
Yeah, at the end of the day, they've probably tried to make a business decision on that. But going forward for you, you mentioned that you see him in the gym sometimes, and you're also at Arizona Combat Sports. Is that difficult to go between two gyms, or how do you find that going between two different gyms?
I wouldn't say it's really too difficult. So I've been training at Arizona Combat Sports for the past 6 years now. So I've been there for a minute, and I just started going to Fight Ready this past December. The way I kind of like to think of it, I like the knowledge that they give at Arizona Combat Sports. I think of it more as a school. And then at Fight Ready, I feel like that's more where I could kind of put into play the knowledge that I'm learning, like on our sparring days. Fight Ready, they do have phenomenal wrestling. So whenever Angel Cejudo, that's Henry Cejudo's brother, whenever he teaches, I feel like I'm soaking in a lot of the knowledge that he teaches. But as far as jiu-jitsu and stand-up goes, I feel like I get most of my knowledge from Arizona Combat Sports.
It's interesting that you're going between two different styles of gym, and obviously you're profiting immensely from it, given your record and given how highly you're speaking of both gyms. So I'm hoping it continues. Can't wait to see what happens for you in the future. What's next for you? Is there anything lined up for you? Have you anything in the pipeline coming soon?
Nothing yet, man. We're focusing right now on my brother, which I really wish I did have a fight booked, but this is a big fight for him. So we just been putting all of our time on his camp. But as soon as this fight finishes, I'm gonna go ahead and reach out to my coach and reach out to my management, see if they could get me a fight booked in May and just get the ball rolling again.
Yeah, it seems like you're getting that itch, especially maybe being with your brother.
Yeah.
That the week of fight camp, you're probably getting that itch, being like, okay, I kind of want to get back in there pretty soon.
Oh, I'm a super jealous person, man. I get really jealous easily with everything. So when I see my brother getting these fights booked and getting uh pretty much like at his fight, I get super jealous. And all the coaches know for his Combate fight, his third professional fight, I was just sitting in the corner and a little upset, and my coach walked up to me and he's like, "What's wrong?" And he said, "Just enjoy your brother's win right now."
Yeah, brilliant. Obviously with your brother as well. Your brother's fighting this weekend. What can we expect to see from your brother this weekend?
You could just see the very calm and collected fighter. For his last two fights, his last fight in the LFA and his UFC debut, he wasn't fully there. He just tried. I think it was the UFC nerves and just the nerves of being the co-main event on the LFA card. Something was holding him back, and now that he's been seeing a sports psychologist, I feel like he's so much more ready to just perform and be himself.
Yeah, really excited to see that this weekend, and obviously wish your brother all the best. And hopefully it goes in his favor. I'm trusting that you can see the process, everything you guys are doing. Really excited to see what happens there. But a couple of finisher sort of questions, and these are some maybe a bit more silly and a bit more fun. But your inspirations. You've talked about Henry Cejudo. You've talked about fighting him and the stuff that he has done and learning from him and all that sort of stuff. Who would be your favorite fighter to watch?
My favorite fighter to watch is probably going to be Max Holloway. I know he's more of a stand-up fighter. I've never really seen too much of his ground game. I know he submitted Cub Swanson, but he really leans more towards the stand-up. I really like to watch him just because of the volume that he has on his volume and pressure that he puts against his fighters. He's super creative, and it's a lot of stuff that I could really copy and put into my game. And also the fact that he's from Hawaii, he's from Hawaii. I always have to support those guys too, back home.
That's the thing as well. There's quite a lot of fighters now coming from Hawaii, and Max Holloway is obviously really well thought of out there. He's a hero, I suppose, in Hawaii in terms of the MMA world. In terms of other Hawaiian fighters, there's quite a lot making names for themselves. Is there a bit of maybe not unwritten, I suppose, but is there a bit of camaraderie? You like to see other Hawaiian fighters do well. You like to see the islands represented.
Oh yeah, anytime there's a Hawaiian fighting, I always love to watch their fight, and I always want to root for them. Just because the way I see it, every time I win, Hawaii wins, and every time they win, I win as well. So it's a win-win situation for us. Really support those guys, and I love the camaraderie that we all have with each other.
That's something I've noticed from speaking to several Hawaiian fighters now. I've noticed there is that real desire to see each other do well. And I haven't really
Mhm.
seen that anywhere else. It seems to be very different, very unique. And I think that's a real credit to you guys, coming from the island and making waves and making names for yourselves. And I just think it's an amazing thing to see. And obviously, you have someone like Max Holloway, who's world renowned for his skills, and he's just putting on clinic after clinic and was probably, in my opinion, the uncrowned champion. I thought he won that second fight, and crazy that he didn't get that decision. And something that I talked about with Camuela when we had this conversation, sometimes the decision making from the powers that be can be very frustrating for a fighter. Is that something that you, as a fighter, when you go into fight, you're quite conscious of? I don't want to leave this in the hands of potentially, I don't want to leave this in the hands of people who may decide to go the other way and may not have to even give an explanation, or maybe don't even, they're not real. My problem is I don't feel they're accountable for their actions. They could make the wrong decision, clear wrong decision, and life just goes on. There's no accountability with it. And that for me is the frustrating point. But for you as a fighter, is that ever in the forefront of your mind that you don't want things to go to the decision?
Yeah, I never want things to go to the judges just because, kind of like what you said, you never know what they're looking for and what they think uh, makes a fighter win a round. And what's so crazy is these judges, they have such an important job. They are pretty much putting these MMA fighters' careers like on the line, and they set them onto the right track to greatness. Being screwed over a fight could really change the trajectory and the direction a fighter is going. Like a fighter could be one fight away from the UFC, and the judges say, "Hey, we're going to give the fight to the other guy." Now he's 3 fights away from the UFC, or same thing with a world championship. Like if you get screwed over that decision, then you're brought down in the rankings. So it doesn't. I don't want to say it really comes across my mind too much because I really try to go for the finish, but I am 100% aware that sometimes these judges might be flukes and they might make the wrong decision.
Yeah, it is 100% a reality, and it's something that we've seen that, and you've made such a brilliant point about it, that you could be one fight away from the UFC, and all of a sudden one wrong decision, and then all of a sudden you need to do 3 more before you get that call, and it's really somebody's livelihood, their career, maybe potentially the rest of their lives, because you never know what someone could do once they get into the UFC and they get momentum and the confidence comes, and all of that's maybe thrown out the window just by a slight wrong decision. Something that they just disagree with. Another question for you is, you said you like to eat. What's your favorite cheat meal?
Oh, my favorite cheat meal. Oh, there's so many, man. So my 100% weakness, and it's not even a meal, it's more so a dessert. Um, I love those cookie ice cream sandwiches, man. Cookies and ice cream, 100% my weakness. And every time I see them, it's especially at my work, they bring a lot of treats over to our work on once a month for whenever they celebrate birthdays. It's just so hard to stay away just because it looks good and I know it tastes good. Yeah.
Just gotta go extra hard that night in the gym.
Yeah, I either gotta go extra hard or I gotta just work on a computer blindfolded just because I know once I break the seal, it's hard to close. And that's what a lot of people make the mistake of. They say, you know what, I'm just going to open this bag of chips. I'm just going to have 2 chips. And then they just start eating a bunch of chips because they broke the seal. Same thing for drinking. A lot of people have that problem. I'm just going to go to the bar and have 1 drink. You know what, let me get another drink. And they broke the seal, so it's easy for others to keep coming in.
3 a.m. staggering home. You got to go get the car the next day.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is, man. So I think the biggest lesson of today: don't break the seal, because if you break the seal, it's hard to close it.
Absolutely. Growing up, who was your hero? Did you have a hero, maybe a cartoon character, favorite idol, someone that stood out to you?
Let's see. I know I had one, but I get punched in the head so many times that I forget a lot of stuff these days. Who is my hero? He obviously isn't my hero because Neo from the Matrix.
Yeah.
From the Matrix, yeah. So I used to love him. I first watched the Matrix actually when it first came out back in 1999 or early 2000s, whatever it is.
Yeah.
My dad had the Nintendo 64 and he had like the guns, whatever, for it.
Yeah.
So I used to just hide it, like tuck it in my pants, and I used to just walk everywhere and pretend I'm shooting. I was a huge fan of Neo. And I had a huge crush on Trinity as well back then for some reason.
I don't think you're the only one, to be honest.
Yeah.
Especially at that time period. You mentioned the N64. As a kid or even still now, are you a gamer? And if so, do you have a favorite video game?
So I'm not really too much of a gamer. Back when I was younger, I did play a lot of Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 2. I even played Black Ops, the first one, and Modern Warfare 3. When Black Ops 2 came out, I kind of stopped just because I kind of thought to myself, I'm spending so much time on these video games, and as soon as a new video game comes out, no one remembers that I prestiged 4 times.
Yeah.
So I kind of just
decided to give it up. The games that I'm playing now, though, I actually have it right here. I play a lot of VR.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So there's this game called Population One. I'm playing with. I usually play with my good friend Cedric, who's actually also a MMA fighter.
Yeah.
I play a lot with him and one of our other friends. His name is JP. Yeah, this game called Population One. It's pretty much like Warzone. It's just a different experience though because it's in VR, so you actually feel like you're in there and you have to hold the guns like this.
Oh, nice.
It's definitely a lot of fun.
The new experience of gaming as we get further and further into this new century. It's incredible. I think where we're going to go with it. I think my first ever fight in a cage or in an octagon will be through a VR headset while I can't get beat up from my couch.
Yeah.
That's my goal.
Oh man, you should get the boxing game. It's I know a lot of people say it's a workout, and this is coming from a professional fighter too. 100% is a workout. I don't know what it is. I don't know if I'm holding my breath or not, but you're just throwing punches like this, and it's definitely a good workout. And the reason why I like it too is it's so realistic. So I've actually been practicing like some moves on there too.
I think it's funny. I think it was actually Joe Rogan and Cody Garbrandt were talking about that in the podcast. I don't know if it was Cody. I can't remember. It was one of the fighters he had on recently. We're talking about this VR headset boxing game, and they were all like, whoever the fighter was, saying it's an incredible workout. And I was like, that's insane. If a professional fighter is telling you that a video game is an incredible workout, okay.
Yeah, you sweat a lot, man. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna do it for my next weight cut. So when I fight at 25. You're ready to see a lot of this. Oculus, if you're watching this right now, sponsor me.
There we go. You're called out the sponsors and everything. A couple more questions before we wrap it up. Favorite movie? Do you have a favorite movie? You mentioned Netflix earlier. We're chilling, watching Netflix, even TV show. Do you have a go-to?
Oh yeah, I could do a favorite TV show, and I know a lot of people are going to be able to relate with me. But Game of Thrones, man,
yeah,
love that. I know they're coming out with from what I heard, a prequel. So the story before Game of Thrones. Did you watch Game of Thrones?
Yeah, I did. They have a really funny story. Do you remember I think it was season 5, where Jon Snow sees the Night King for the first time, and he's like up on a ledge overlooking the village?
Yeah.
I'm originally from Northern Ireland, and that's where that scene is filmed. It's actually in a quarry near my house. And if you actually say the camera went up a little bit and zoomed past the Night King and went into behind where he was, it's actually, there's a little pub there and there's a soccer field. And I remember watching that little clip and being like, oh, he's at the Blue Circle pub. Is where the
so you knew exactly where they were.
Yeah, it was quite funny. Quite huge fan.
I know one time they had that Starbucks coffee too.
Yeah.
Coffee, like they had to like cut it out or something like that.
Yeah.
Huge fan of Game of Thrones. I'm pretty sure me and you and 99.9% of people who watch Game of Thrones agree with me, but I really don't like the way it ended, but it is what it is. I mean, not really much we could do about it. I wasn't happy with it, but it just took me a good few months to get over it.
Yeah. At the time, I was like, this sucks. And then my wife she'd never seen it ever, none of it. So I wanted to watch it back, and we binged the whole thing. And watching it back the second time, I thought that actually wasn't as bad as I thought. I guess it was because we'd waited 2 years to kind of see this ending, and then it was rushed and felt thrown together. But the second time I watched it, I thought it was okay. I seen a crazy stat today. I think it's been 10 years since he's brought out the last book, and he's 74. So I'd be sitting going, if they didn't end it, would we all just be waiting on an ending, and then maybe it never came? You know what I mean? But yeah, I agree with you. At the time, it sort of ended and just felt flat. It didn't have that triumphant kind of like, that was awesome ending that maybe say the Avengers did or Marvel do, stuff like that. A show like that really deserved it. In terms of motivation, this will be the last question for you and we'll wrap this up. What's your biggest motivational factor? What motivates you to want to get better, to want to keep pursuing this dream, to want to keep chasing, to want to become a champion?
So what really got me going is, so I actually competed at Jiu-Jitsu Worlds as a purple belt back in 2017, and I lost my first match, and I was really disappointed with the outcome. A month later, I had a fight to win match, and that's those Jiu-Jitsu super fights. pretty popular now on flow grappling and in the jiu-jitsu community. I had this guy comment on one of my pictures and he just said, remember who you do it for. And that always stuck with me because, and the reason why I brought up my jiu-jitsu worlds is because when I went in there, I just went in there with the mindset of I'm going to compete and I'm going to do my best. And when he commented on my post, remember who you do it for, that's when I started thinking about my family, my friends, and all my supporters. Like, I'm doing this for all of them, you know, and I want them to be proud of me. And I know regardless of I win or lose, they're always going to be proud, but I always want to make the best possible outcome for me so that I'm happy and my family and friends and all my supporters are too.
I think that's key, and I can obviously see the relationship between yourself and your brother from what you've talked about. You're there with him. It's fight week. You talked about your mother earlier in the podcast. She's now your number one supporter, and obviously the friends and family is a massive thing for you. And obviously, it's great to see them support you. It's great to see the backing that they have for you, and obviously me here doing the podcast. I wish you all the best in the future, and just wanted to thank you for taking out 1 hour of your time tonight just to talk with me, chat about a bit of your career so far, some of your goals, some of your aspirations. We had a bit of on my side a bit of technical difficulties at the start of the podcast, and I appreciate you give me an extra 5 minutes to figure all that stuff out. But Christian, thank you so much for appearing on the show. It's been my absolute pleasure to have you on the show this week.
Of course, man, I'm really glad you reached out to me. I've heard of your podcast before, and when you reached out to me, I got super excited. Really glad for the opportunity, and I loved everything that we talked about. I love the relationship that we're making here, and I really can't wait to jump on a podcast in the near future with you.
I'm going to have to hold you to that, because when you make it to the UFC, when you're KOing people, I'm going to be going, hey, get back on the podcast. You told me on my last podcast you'd give me a round two. But Christian, thank you so much for coming on tonight. I really appreciate it.
Of course, man. Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I really appreciate all you guys.